Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Charlie Fibrosis, and with 1990 through 1998 and the NASCAR and Winston Cup Series coming to a close, we get to come to the point where I became a fan of the sport. So we'll take late 90s, put it aside, and we'll talk about these two particular years. So this actually has an interesting story here. Now, this is my original NASCAR card book. This was made by my dad for me over the course of August of 1999. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. During this time, I was a young boy. I just kind of got into racing. The way that the story kind of goes is that one day my dad was flipping through the channels and going through, and all of a sudden a NASCAR race came up. And, you know, a little boy loves Hot Wheels, loves cars, loves anything to do with motor vehicles, and I wanted to watch. Well, I kept asking my dad, well, who drives this car? 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 I kept asking him questions about drivers and who they were, what their sponsor was. And that's the other thing. Back in the 90s, there were some really colorful NASCAR sponsorships. And I will say 1999, one of the best years, honestly. Look at some of this stuff. I will say I do like Mark Martin's scheme from a little bit earlier, like in 1997 or so. But you gotta admit, this is pretty cool. And all of these sponsors, for a young 5-year-old at the time, were actually very appropriate. You got Hot Wheels, you got McDonald's, you got... For a young 5-year-old, these are definitely very family-friendly sponsors. You got Hot Wheels, you got McDonald's, you got Kodak Max, you got Kellogg's Corn Flakes, you got Valvoline, you got Citgo, you got Cheerios, and you got oh-so-tasty M&Ms. And the only thing that was probably not kid-friendly was the NASCAR Winston Cup Series logo on here. But my dad took time in 1999 to make me a very special present. Well, unfortunately, all the stuff that I collected inside of this book and just this general binder eventually started to fall apart. So I went ahead and I gave it a facelift. So I went ahead and created this. So this is the newer version. It still has the original sheets of paper inside of there, minus maybe 2 that are reprints. But otherwise, everything in this card book is original. So I recreated the front, I recreated the spine, I recreated the backing as well. Made it look a little bit nicer with HD textures a little bit here, but that's kind of beside the point. Let's get into it. So this was actually pretty cool. I loved collecting the die casts of that time, and oftentimes they would include these. And you can still find these in older die casts all over the place. But this is like a picture of the driver, or in the case down here with Johnny Benson and Bobby Hamilton. Let's get some stuff out. These were really cool. These are just little cardboard stands for the die cast that you could purchase at like Walmart or Kmart or anywhere else, honestly. And, nice for me at least, they include the driver's signature, they include his date of birth, they include his name, they include his home and location, and this is really, really cool to me. Even though that this does go into the future some with this particular book, this was a magazine that I picked up from a book fair when I was in elementary school, and this is more focused on the 2000s. But there's a lot of drivers and a lot of things in here that still reflected that time period. So Dale Jarrett still drove the Ford Quality Care car. Bobby Labonte was in the 18. Mark Martin was in the 6. Technically, I think that this actually is a blend of pictures from the 1999 NASCAR season and some stuff from the 2000 season. Jeff Burton, Dale Earnhardt. That would be kind of an interesting like photo background. Jeff Gordon, Rusty Wallace, and I find this funny. Because it had alcohol sponsorship, they just turned his car completely white on the hood. Kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Mike Skinner with the Lowe's sponsorship. Ward Burton in the Caterpillar car. Terry Labonte in the Kellogg's Cornflakes car. Kyle Petty. I love this picture so much. And I don't know why, but it's just a great spread of the number 44 car of Petty. I love that. I love that Hot Wheels paint scheme. One of the last years with Dale Waltrip. And then this is an interesting one. Jeremy Mayfield with the 12 with the Kentucky Derby sponsoring his car. Whatever race that was, I don't know. Unfortunately, the back cover, whatever was on this side, is lost. That got lost years and years ago. But I still keep this together because I really like it. I like having a big spread of photos. Alright, so let's get into the cards. So this one is not as organized or so, or could be organized a little bit differently, but it's not that big of a deal to me. This is sort of how these cards were put together back in 1999 with how I wanted it at the time, but it has gone also through some retooling. There's not many cards in this particular set. I think I just wanted to collect diecast mainly and race them around cardboard racetracks and so. But we got Terry Labonte, Dale Jarrett, Ricky Rudd, Jamie Mayfield, Tony Stewart, Dale Waltrip, another Dale Jarrett card, Jeff Gordon, and a Dale Earnhardt Jr. card. And that one was a checklist. This one, pretty darn cool. I'll actually take one of these cards out here in a little bit and show you why this is so cool. Terry Labonte, Jeffrey Bodine, Tony Stewart, Ken Schrader, Mike Skinner, Jerry Nadeau, Dale Earnhardt Jr., that would be Jeffrey Bodine and Ken Schrader. And this is why I want to talk about this. Let's pull out this Dale Jr. card real quick. Such a small card in such little print, but they actually include a lot of information about the driver here. And they did that for all of these, which is really, really nice. They even did the same for some that wouldn't even seem that way with Ken Schrader's here, because it's just a picture of the car. Johnny Benson, Chad Little, Jerry Nadeau with the whole Looney Tunes car. Not Looney Tunes, I'm sorry. Cartoon Network. Bill Elliott, another card of Ken Schrader, another card of Mike Skinner, Kyle Petty, Elliott Sadler, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Chad Little, Dale Waltrip, another Dale Waltrip card. I don't know why there's a blank space here. There is. John Andretti, Kyle Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and then a Dale Earnhardt Jr. card. Now, the interesting thing is these two cards came from diecasts that I got. This one was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s AC Delco Championship winning card, and this was Dale Earnhardt's. But I particularly like these. I like these actual next set of cards I'm about to show you. It's very similar. They have a very similar style of backing here. This one is actually a Kenner's Toys one. But I really, really like it, honestly. Also, I'm very thankful that this card is still in good condition. It's got a few little dings in it, but it's not bad. Not bad at all. Jeff Gordon, the late Kenny Irwin Jr., and this is the only Kenny Irwin Jr. card I have. Mike Skinner, Jeff Gordon, Jeff Burton, Jeremy Mayfield, Richard Petty, and then this was actually pretty cool. So I'll talk about this for a moment. So, back during this time, I was a big fan of Gran Turismo. And this, by far, was the coolest freaking car that I ever saw in the world. It's a Dodge Viper with the American flag as its livery. This is badass. This is such a badass car. My dad searched tirelessly all over the place looking for this car, and he found it. Now, I don't know where the diecast is, and I really, really wish I didn't ship it up and everything, but this was a car that I loved so much, and I'm so glad that I kept the card around. Here's that. We also got some interesting cards here. These came with some NASCAR cards from the 1997 season. So we got Michael Waltrip, Ernie Irvan, Jeff Fuller, and Matt Kenseth from 2000. We also got some Hot Wheels in here. Twin Mill, Mutt Mobile, the XT-3, and the Rigger motor. I never owned any of these cars, but they are interesting nevertheless. This was actually something interesting that I found. Someone had a whole bunch of old, kind of like tear-off cards that they used to have in 1999 with the Coca-Cola Racing family at the time. Now, why is this significant? Because a lot of the drivers that are in here, they had such a limited career, or really, the Coca-Cola Racing family, it kind of sucks, but it's not really that big of a thing anymore. I know that they still mention it, but during the 90s, during the 2000s, the Coca-Cola Racing family was always a big deal. And it kind of sucks that they no longer do that. But like I said, 1999, personally, some of the best NASCAR paint schemes were available that year. So, we have the entire Coca-Cola Racing family up here. We got Steve Park, a 7-time champion Dale Earnhardt with a Dale Earnhardt card. The 1999 Napa 500 champion and Bobby Labonte, then a Bobby Labonte card. 1999 Rookie of the Year in Tony Stewart with the Tony Stewart card. A very, very sweet card here for Kyle and Adam Petty. They include a little bit of information on both of them, and then they have their individual cards, and Kyle and Adam Petty here. 1999 NASCAR Winston Cup Series champion Dale Jarrett, and a regular Dale Jarrett card. Bill Elliott, Jeff Burton, the 1999 Coca-Cola 600 champion, and then Jeff Burton. You go to the back here. This is actually something that I found a number of years ago. So one thing that kind of interested me was a long time ago, my grandparents gave me a fake driver's license. Not a real driver's license, but gave me this, which is a Kyle Petty laminated card here. There really isn't much in terms of making these things special by any means. I will have you note that this is the 2000 scheme that Petty drove. The last year that he drove with Hot Wheels as a sponsor, unfortunately. But I always thought that these were kind of cool, to be honest. I wouldn't carry these around personally, but I got them organized in number, at least at the time, for 1999. Dale Earnhardt, Dale Jr., Tony Stewart, Kyle Petty, Dale Jarrett. Now we get to the nostalgia. So, you can find most of these sheets on the old website, Wayback Machine, but this is pretty interesting. This is what my dad spent so much of his time doing. And remember, this is 1999. Printers are still pretty expensive to this day, but it takes a lot of ink in order to do stuff, no matter what. And my dad took weeks and weeks to make this, and this was the bulk of it. Remember I was talking about all those drivers I didn't know anything about? Well, my dad remedied that. This is the entire, as to what you could find on the original ESPN, I believe, NASCAR website for all the drivers associated with the 1999 season. This matters a lot to me. I've actually gone ahead and I've scanned each and every page inside of here to a digital copy. So should these pages, which, remember, these were printed in 1999, should they ever be damaged or destroyed, I have a virtual copy to back me up. Let's get into it. So this includes every single driver's name that's sorted alphabetically in this case, their car number, their manufacturer, their owner, and then their crew chief, which is rather interesting. but we go in numeric order. Now, technically, more than anything, I think the 00 or Buckshot Jones would actually probably go after all the single numbers, but I think because it's the 00, it just made sense to put him first. So a page on Buckshot Jones, page on Steve Park, Rusty Wallace, Dale Earnhardt, Bobby Hamilton, Terry Labonte. Now here's why I want to pause on this one. I don't know if you can see it, but down in the bottom corner is the date, August 20th, 1999, 10:20 a.m. Why does this date matter? Why does this day matter? Why does that time matter? Because of this. I think my dad was printing a lot of these pages probably from, let's say, around the 15th of August of 1999 through about the 20th, and got it done either shortly thereafter or the day of. And why does this matter? Because this, unfortunately, would be the very last time Ernie Irvan would ever race in NASCAR. Ernie, 5 years earlier, had a horrifying accident at Michigan that almost cost his life. Ernie, later on that morning, I don't know what time he wrecked, but that day, 5 years, like I said, after his near-fatal accident, he would go out and practice, he would crash his car, he would suffer a head injury, and he would announce his retirement from NASCAR. Had these pages been printed and changed any later than this date, there very well may have been a real chance that I would have no idea, not a care in the world, who Ernie Irvan was. And that's a tragedy. Let me explain this real quick, and we'll get to his page eventually. In my honest opinion, Ernie Irvan was a very, very solid NASCAR driver. He did have his mistakes. He did make some goofy decisions. And his time with the number 4 car, not the best, but pretty good. I mean, he won a Daytona 500 with them. My thought is this. Had Ernie not run the 1999 season, had I not had any association with him in this card book or anything of the sort, I don't think I would have known who Ernie Irvan was. And because of all this, as it happened, as when this was printed, it means a lot to me. Ernie Irvan probably would have just been a random humdrum driver who really didn't do anything with his career. But it's because of this card book that it made me learn more about Ernie Irvan, and subsequently made me learn a lot about earlier NASCAR during the 90s, the 80s, and on back. Let's move on. This is why that page is important to me. This is a reprint, but it still is accurate. Mark Martin in the number 6 car. Michael Waltrip. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Yep. Dale was not a full-time driver yet. He would not start racing in the Winston Cup Series until 2000, the very next year. But it essentially is rookie page, more or less. Jerry Nadeau, who would actually replace Ernie shortly after his injury. Ricky Rudd, Brett Bodine, Jeremy Mayfield, Kevin LePage. Bobby Labonte, Tony Stewart, Elliott Sadler, very young Elliott Sadler, Ward Burton, Jimmy Spencer, which that was a really cool paint scheme, by the way. Jeff Gordon, I think this is a reprint as well, because it looks rather clean. Wally Dallenbach, Johnny Benson, love that Cheerios car. Kenny Irwin, who took over the 28 in 1998 and then drove it in 1999, and would unfortunately pass away in 2000. Derek Cope, Mike Skinner, Ken Schrader, Ernie Irvan. And they even talk about his Michigan wreck in here. Sterling Marlin, which, by the way, that was an interesting paint scheme. David Green, Joe Nemechek, John Andretti, Kyle Petty, that was a reprint because the original one got some water spilled on it and caused the colors to run. Rich Bickle, Dan Pontis, Kenny Wallace, Hut Strickland, which, by the way, I think that car and that paint scheme was used in the Cars movie because it looks really, really similar. Jeffrey Bodine, Dale Waltrip, Dave Marcus, Ted Musgrave, Robert Presley, Gary Bradbury, Dale Jarrett, the eventual champion, Dick Trickle in the 91 car for LJ Racing, Bill Elliott, Chad Little, Rick Mast in the Woody Woodpecker car for Cale Yarborough, and Jeff Burton. I did actually include 2 pages behind this that were not originally part of the book that I did find on the Wayback Machine website, and that was Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the Busch Series for that year, and Adam Petty. And then we go back to here. The last 2 items of this particular card book. So technically, this is more of a season with really more of a focus on 1999 and 1999 only. There is some slight crossover here, but not as much. And it's really because I don't really have a lot of 2000 memorabilia. But this is rather cool. This has seen a lot of wear and tear over the years, but this is really interesting. You got the entire schedule for the NASCAR Winston Cup Series there, and then a map. A massive, massive map of every single race that they ran that season. And then, in addition, you flip it over, and it includes information about each and every single track here. And that's really cool. And then, the most meaningful piece of it all. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a magazine, or is a newspaper clipping that my dad cut out and preserved all these years, all about the Pop Secret 500 at Rockingham. Now, I don't know when this race was run specifically. I'm sure I could look that up. But this is a genuine old news clipping. My dad did not have to do this. Honestly, it's kind of surprising that it was specifically Rockingham, because Rockingham is no longer part of the NASCAR schedule. But my dad took the time, cut it out, and put it in this card book for me. This particular card book, this is the start of it all. This is where I became a NASCAR fan. This is where it goes. All these years, all the stuff that I've collected was all because a father wanted to give his little boy a very, very special present and have something that he and his young son could enjoy together and learn together with. And this is such a sentimental piece to my collection. I thank my dad very, very much for this. And it makes me smile and makes me cry a little bit every time I get to look through this. It was such a heartfelt present, and it means a lot to me. Alright guys, next time we'll be going on to the 2000 through onward with the new NASCAR series. So that was 1999. Let's move on to the next book.